Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. This week we're going to revisit trees, how to paint them, different techniques that you can use to make them. They're actually quite easy, and once you get in there and doing it, you'll realize that and have a lot more fun and creativity in your own work. We're also reusing another old canvas, so I want to encourage you, if you don't like your work, don't throw it away, just paint over it. We can make something great out of this. So I started getting into Lego builds, I mentioned before, and they're quite fun, and they're really not for just for kids. And I made some videos and put some of those builds on another channel, and I'll put that link in the description below. I hope you go check them out. So go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and click that notification bell so that you will be alerted to new videos, and please share this video with someone who you think might learn from these fundamentals. I'm Kendall Stump, and welcome to the Stump Project. All right, everyone, let's jump right into this. I'm reusing this canvas, covered it with liquid and titanium white because you don't put acrylic or a gesso on top of an old oil painting. What's going to happen is your new acrylic or your gesso is not going to stick to the surface over time, and eventually it start crumbling and peeling off. So you want to put oil on top of oil to make it work. So there's a couple ways you can do that. One, you can use an oil ground, which is like an oil-based primer. You can put that on there and cover everything up. I just chose to cover everything with a layer of titanium white, and that seems to work just fine, just because I don't have any oil ground. So when I get some, I will demo that for you and let you see how well it works. Then I put some raw umber on here just to kind of tone my canvas so that it is wet, slick, and ready to go. I am going to point out that right up here in the corner, I've got a highlight, and that's from the light above me. I've kind of rearranged my studio a little bit, and now I've got a hot spot on my canvas, and I am not really sure how to fix that. Well, that might help. I just tilted it down. I'm sitting on a kneeling chair as I'm doing this, so actually this kind of gives me more of a straight on view of my canvas instead of kind of looking up at it a little bit. So that might actually help me. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in a sky and maybe a foothill in the background here, and we're going to focus on building like a copse of trees. That's going to be the main subject of this painting. We'll keep it on the lower third. Again, you divide up your canvas. Here will be 1/3, here will be 1/3, and then of course you want to divide it up vertically as well. And then each of those intersecting points is where your focus or point of interest should probably be. I think what we're going to do ultimately is just focus on the third. So we're going to put the horizon. The horizon will be right around in here, and that's where we'll focus. I'm not going to worry too much about the horizontals at this point. And like I said earlier, I'm using Liquid Original, this stuff right here. It's an alkyd that helps speed up the drying time of your paint. The sky I want to be blue, but I want it to be I'm going to have a tint of purple to it. So I'm going to use a little bit of alizarin crimson. Just the tiniest bit, and I have it on my canvas, and I'm just dipping into it. You can see my brush is kind of, I'm not mixing it on my canvas. I'm going to mix it on the. I'm sorry, I'm not mixing it on my palette. I'm mixing it on my canvas, so I can get a nice variety of color as I put it on. As I'm doing this, I know that I want to have those foothills in here, and I know that they're going to be a ways away. So I want them to kind of take on the color of the environment, because, you know, I tell you, the further things are away in the environment, the more those things tend to take on the color of that environment. So the blue sky is going to be the environment that these things are going to live in. So I'm going to pull it down further than what I intend it to be, and then when I paint over it, it's going to mix up with that color, and it's going to help create that illusion that these things are further and further away. I know that, like I said, we divide this into thirds, so it's going to come down here, right? So this is where my horizon is going to be, somewhere around in here. So I want to bring that ground color all the way down. And if it doesn't quite make sense yet, hang on with me, it'll get there. This down here is essentially, it's just color for color's sake. It's going to get painted over and used to mix in with other stuff. I want to put in just some fluffy clouds up there. Nothing too crazy ridiculous. I'm just going to put a little bit of alizarin crimson in with that and just put some stuff on my fan brush. And I know that I want the tops of the foothills to be like on this third line here. So we'll just put in some, just let this brush just kind of dance across. And you see, as you see on the tips of the brush there, I started picking up some paint from the canvas, and then that's just going to dilute the paint that the color that I want to put on there, that white. So wipe it off. See, you'll pick it up, just wipe it off. Just use a paper towel. And I just want these to be subtle clouds, nothing crazy. Just put them on here or there. Remember, clouds live off of your canvas. Don't think that you have to just make it so that they're just right there in your picture. I mean, it makes more sense if they're here and way over here somewhere. I just want this to be kind of a fun sky, just maybe a little bit more red. Okay, so this is my number 2 natural bristle brush from the Bob Ross collection. I really like this brush. You guys have heard me talk about it over and over again. I'm always in the search for a good brush, but I have not found one other than this one. So this is kind of my go-to blender. And you just softly, using the sides. We're not using the tip. We're not going at it like this. We're going at it like this. And just softly, just kind of blend those. I'm just looking for wisps of clouds at the moment. Nothing too crazy. That's not to say that you can't. And you don't have to use a fan brush just like I did. You can use any instrument you want. Here's a palette knife, for example. Let's put some white paint on the back. Let's just say, what if we want it more stringy, straight clouds, right? See those? What if I want something like that? Well, you can do that. It's your painting. And then again, you just do the same thing. You just just pull it right across. You want them to be those wispy little lines of clouds. Wipe your brush off every now and again. Just wipe it off. Just come in here like this. Just wipe off the extra paint. And then just pull it just lightly. If you want it to blend out, the more you blend this, the more you mess with it, the more you're going to blend it in. So if things look too bright for you, just keep touching it, and eventually it will go away. And you see, I touched the canvas there, and that's fine, right? It's a cloud. I mean, it can go anywhere, and you can just blend it away. If you don't like it, just blend it away. So there, you see that some of the tone that was in the canvas when I originally put it on here just kind of come through the blue, and it gives me a nice mottled sky. And I like that. And this looks organic and unique. We didn't have to spend a lot of time on it. It worked. So now I want to get into the foothills. So I'm using some raw umber and some sap green. I put one on one side of my paintbrush and one on the other side of my paintbrush. And the reason why, I don't know, it just kind of works to do it that way. It will blend and the bristles will break through, and well, you'll see when we get up here. So I'm going to start at the top of this, where we want the foothills to be, right around in here. And we're just going to put some of these foothills in. And maybe just push up a little bit. It kind of gives the idea of maybe some vegetation or some trees way off in the background. Don't worry too much about the bottom line, because that's all going to get covered up. I will probably blend out this top part a little bit because I want it to feel a little bit more misty. All this stuff way down to about here is all going to be foothills. So just let this kind of, let the lay of the land happen for you. Pull the paint, use the side of your brush. The side of your brush, you can kind of see that I've got paint on the side of my brush now. Use the side of your brush to kind of just pull this paint around. This stuff here, one of the other things that I neglect to mention, when we talk about distance, we talk about how things, further away things get, the more they tend to take on the color of the environment, which is true. But the one thing that I neglect to mention is that they also lose contrast. So keep that heavily in the front of your mind. As things go away from you, they will lose contrast. I'm just going to add a little bit of texture before I smooth some of this stuff out, because it's not going to smooth it out. I'm not going to blend it to the point of obscurity. I'm just going to blend. So I'm just letting some of the, and the more you tap this, just like anything else, the more you will blend things to obscurity. Right, then we go back into our brush, and because I don't want to pull this up into the sky, I'm going to start from the top and I'm going to pull it down. Like that. You pick up a little bit of paint and you just wipe it off. And what this is doing, it's just getting rid of a little bit of that extra paint. It's going to be at the top, so that when we do blend this a little bit more, we won't be at the risk of smearing that around in the sky. And then you can come in with some highlights that you may imagine where the sun may be. Now we want the sun, it's going to be behind the trees. There's going to be a dark copse of trees right here. So maybe the sun is coming from, this direction right here. So if the hill is coming down this way, maybe we want some lighter values. Just break this up just a little bit. Maybe some green gets in here, especially the more towards the bottom that we get here. A little bit more green. Maybe a little yellow ochre. We'll mix up with that a little bit just to maybe give it the idea of maybe dried out grass just way off in the distance. Because we want this to be fairly light to go against the dark copse of trees. Now, I mean, not think that this is very light right now, but it'll get there. It will get there, because it's all about proportional value. You know, how light something is greatly is determined. How light something appears is greatly determined by the values that surround it. Yeah, I'm not going to blend that anymore. I'm just going to, except for maybe that thing right there. We're just going to let those textures just sit there and just, we'll see what happens with that. Putting a back line of trees here, and just use your brush just to create all that stuff, all that texture, all that implied detail. Just have a starting point here. I think I'm going to add some additional green, so we'll come in here and with a smaller brush and just add a little bit more contrast right up in here. I like to use these Artist Loft brushes that you can find in any art supply store for some of the minor details or smaller details. Just trying to increase the contrast right here. So instead of putting this row of color down, what I should have done, which I'm trying to do now, is put a line of dark. And you know what? I'm going to do that, but I'm going to use a bigger brush to do that. Okay, let's come in here. I mixed a little bit of Prussian blue and raw umber, which gives me a really nice dark color, really nice, almost black. I prefer to use ultramarine blue, but I didn't have that handy at the moment. And let it mix with that color that's on the canvas, and that's fine because it's going to lighten it up a little bit. We're mixing on the canvas. It's going to lighten it up, and it's going to help it take on that color that's on there. It's going to make the painting more homogenous there. And we don't have to worry too much about all this stuff down here. You just might want to leave it because there's some nice detail that's in there. But there's that piece. And then now we can come in with that other brush, this Artist Loft brush, and we can start putting in some of the highlights. And again, I'm using sap green, some yellow ochre, and maybe even some burnt sienna. And I'm just tapping, and I'm letting the paint come off. And I'm remembering that we want the highlights to be coming in from this direction here. So, and think of the trees as a shape, not just a flat shape, but a three-dimensional shape, right? So it's going to have the cover, the canopy on it. It's going to be arched and rounded, right? Depending on the shape of the form of the tree. And it's going to come around. There's going to be an underside to it. So this part under here, right along this line, is probably going to remain dark. And things that are coming this way, depending on the angle of your light, this part of the tree right here may be casting a shadow over here. So the more you work this and tap and tap and tap, let it come down, let it get darker and darker and darker. See, and then you get a bunch of paint on your paintbrush. You want to make sure you wipe that off. Turn your brush. If you have problems making your paint stick, just thin it out just a little bit. You can use Odo's mineral spirits. You can use a little bit more liquid. Turn your brush, get those strokes more random. And remember, before you dip back into your paint, wipe off your brush. You're picking up all that paint that's on the canvas. Think of how the form is of the tree. Think of how these aren't just random marks. You know, think of how the trees are growing and what that copse of trees may look like. Change up your flavor of your highlights a little bit. You can dip in a little bit more of the burnt sienna if you want to, a little bit of, if you mix some of the blue that we use for the sky in with the yellow ochre, you can get a nice olive green. And you're not trying to cover up all of the dark. Where we want to leave, I'm going to put some more dark down here just to make sure that we've got that preserved. Now I'm not worried about the bottom edge here just yet. I just want to make sure that we maintain the idea that these things are rounded and that shadows are being cast. And I'm not going to worry too much about this right here in the middle, because this is where the cusp of trees is going to go. Show a little bit of a distance. But you do want something here in the background, just in case whatever you're painting happens to peek through, like you leave holes in your trees or whatnot. You can see that it gives that illusion of trees, maybe some lost edges through here. Maybe it's misty because this blue is floating around up in here. Some mist that's floating around in the atmosphere. We can even add to that a little bit just by looking into our blues, our blue and white that we use for the sky. And we just tap in some what might be trees on the high end of the high edge of this light spot right here. And they're just faint. They're not meant to be really pronounced or anything like that. They're just let your imagination wander. Just let it go. Like maybe there's maybe all kinds of stuff in here. The things that edge brush strokes, like right here, it stops a little harsh abruptly. Give it a reason to. So like maybe there's a different kind of tree that's right there in front of it maybe. All right, I'm just going to use a palette knife, and I'm putting a base in at the tree with a little bit of a darker color. Some of this is, so it's that mixture that I just put together of yellow ochre, permanent red, cadmium yellow, and titanium white, and I'm mixing it up with some of the rest of the palette mixture that I had, that I said I need to clean up my palette. So I just scraped it all up into a pile, and I just took a little bit of that to darken up. And this is acting like the shadow color at the base of the trees. Okay, so now I use that orangey color. I'm going to put highlights on top of this, but I'm just going to start by getting in some texture. This is way off in the background. We're going to let some of those colors blend right back there, that shadow color that we just put in. The lay of the land, keep that in mind as you're putting down the colors. Your brush strokes matter. So if you want your land to be hilly, make sure you put in your brush strokes hilly, or at an angle rather. a little darker down here at the bottom. It's kind of blocking in color at the moment. We'll be able to go in with some highlights when this is all filled in. Just keep, when I go to get new color, I put it at the, I start at the bottom, and then you can work your way up, because the brush is going to, or the paint will work its way off of the brush, and it'll become lighter and lighter as the more that you use it. And we kind of want it to, the darkest part of the canvas to be the bottom to be the darkest part of the canvas. Just changing the flavor every now and again, lightening it up as we go, as we move upward. And again, right now I'm looking for color value. I'm not necessarily looking for a lot of detail. Like I said, just a little bit of value, and then just to give us a base to work on. And then from there we can start adding some shadow. It's like the mid-tone. So now we can start adding some contrast to that. So you want to add some bushes and some shrubbery. Bring it up, like right here. Bring it up, let it break the line that's in the back. If you don't, you're just going to look like you have layers upon layers of stuff, and I'm sure that that's not what you're trying to accomplish. I'm just giving it a flick. You can use whatever technique you're comfortable with to apply that texture. The highlights, just put some of that highlight color in my palette knife. Right where we want. See, now I've got a bunch of that green on my, just wipe that off before you contaminate the rest of your color. And we'll just start putting some highlights in where you think that the sun might be hitting way off in the distance. Now you see how that lighter color turns into the darker color because we put an even lighter value on top. Okay, now we can go into our brush and just touching some of those areas back there, or up here, pushing them up a little bit, getting some tufts of grass. Not so much of the ones clear in the back, because you want, like again, the further things are away, that you start to lose contrast and you lose that individuality of each of those bits of vegetation. Okay, now we'll be painting some stuff behind the trees, but let's start getting into the trees. We'll put that tree right in here-ish. So I'm gonna start with more of that really dark color, and I'm just loading up my brush. So I just smashed my bristles down on the canvas and just loaded up that brush. And I'm going to bring the tree all the way up here, or the copse all the way up here, and because this is going to be the focus right here. And I'm just going to just come right in. Now you see all the stuff that's going on. Look at all that detail. Just push those bristles right up against your canvas. And just let that detail happen. We want, obviously, in the middle, you want it more dense, but on the edges, let those bristles display and break. And we may need to lighten up some of this area that's behind the tree to help bring that tree, I say tree, it's a copse of trees. You may need to bring that forward. Turn your brush as you do this. Just push it. Then you're just looking at the overall shape of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And we'll draw in maybe the shadow of where it's going to be to give us a working space. And leave some holes in here too. And we're going to get to the trunks here in a moment. But this will kind of give you the idea. I'm pushing up against the canvas here. It's letting the bristles just put that texture down. Remember, we want the sun to be coming kind of this direction. So we're going to cast our shadow up this way. Okay, now comes some of the fun part, interesting part. Take a paper towel and twist it into a nice tight taper. We're going to draw in the tree trunks. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to put it on here, on the canvas, and I'm just going to push. And I'm going to let the randomness do with it what it will. So I imagine around these dark areas is where we'll have some trunks. You see, then you get some paint on your towel. So you may need to, depending on how much paint you get, you may need to re-roll, or something else you could do maybe is you can use some ear swabs. Now, you get a bunch of paint on your swab, you see that, so you have to turn it. You don't get too many chances with one swab, then you have to use the other end. Or if you want to use that paint, you can kind of take that paint right up through the middle and kind of fill in there. Another thing you can do is just use a paintbrush. Dip it in mineral spirits. See if we can emphasize any of these at all by scratching them. Get some smaller twigs and randomness in there. Maybe highlights on a trunk. Turn your palette knife different ways. You can get different, get as detailed as you want. Just scrape, paint away, just scrape and scratch it. And you don't have to worry too much about it at this point because we're going to cover some of this back up. Think about it like this. You put on your back part of the tree. Now we're putting on the middle part of the tree. Now we're going to put on the front part of the tree. A little bit of sap green mixed in with some burnt sienna. And we'll just start putting in, and then we'll hit this again with some highlights. Again, you want to think about the form of the tree. How is the tree growing? What does that look like? And it's up to you, 100% up to you. Think of the shape of the clusters of leaves in here. Remember, if we had the sunlight coming this way, the undersides of those leaf clusters will be in shadow. So just keep that in mind. And change the flavor of the highlights up depending on the vegetation, where you're at. And remember, always leave that space under it, under those things, as the shape would come down. Then as we get into the darker areas right here, we'll start to use a little bit lighter values to help kind of make it stand out a little bit against the dark background. You just cover up some of those trunks, just let them peek through, come back into some of that dark color too, and just really push some of those things back. Not everything, mind you, but some of it you can. Okay, then once this dries, I may come in and glaze a little bit in the background right there to help lighten that up. I want to keep the value, well, I'm going to say that. I want to keep the value of that structure that's right there. I like that, but I want to lighten it up as a whole. So I'll wait until it dries, and then I'll put a lighter color on top of that just to kind of help break that up a little bit. Okay, now we'll just start to come in here and put a little bit more structured detail. Put some vegetation in here that's popping up. Just pushing my bristles up against the canvas and then letting the paint come off in that texture. As we get down towards the bottom, we want that to get darker and darker. I want a bunch of paint right here because we're going to use that paper towel trick one more time and spin this into a nice taper like this. And I want to smack the canvas with it down here towards the bottom. And it's this. It's just going to give me some nice texture, some foliage. Feels like I need to bring this blue down just a little bit. It just soften this off just a little. Yeah, see, it makes it feel like that's further away now just because I blurred it out so much. Then it helps with that tree, because now there's more light around it. It helps to really bring that forward. So you see, trees are pretty easy to make. It's just all thinking about form and its shape. Once you get those two things down and you start to understand them, then you realize how light is going to affect them in different ways. It's great to reuse old canvases, pieces of work that you didn't necessarily care for before. Don't waste your canvas, just paint over it and try it again. You can find inspiration anywhere. Don't be afraid to look. Go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time.